The laughter echoed across the shooting range like gunfire, sharp, mocking, and aimed straight at her. Annie Ray was used to people underestimating her. With her worn-out jeans, sun-faded flannel, and calloused hands from raising goats on a small family farm, she didn't look like someone who belonged at the prestigious Copper Ridge Shooting Championship. To the men in crisp tactical gear and women with designer shooting glasses, she was just this simple countrywoman, a joke before the real competition began. But what they didn't know was that Annie hadn't come to play. She hadn't always planned on entering the competition. In fact, she'd only found out about it a month prior, when her son Ethan brought home a flyer from town. "Mom, you should try," he said with his usual quiet voice. "I've seen you shoot bottle caps off the fence from the porch. You're better than anyone I've ever seen." Annie chuckled then, brushing dirt off her apron. "That's just farm stuff, baby. Those folks compete for money and medals. I just make sure coyotes don't get the chickens." But Ethan had that look in his eyes, the same look his late father used to get before taking a wild risk. Her husband, Will, was a Marine sharpshooter who never got to come home from his final deployment. Before leaving, he had taught Annie how to shoot, saying, "One day, if things ever go south, you protect the family." After he died, the rifle was her only companion some nights, steady, reliable, and oddly comforting. So when Annie stared at the flyer long enough, she made a quiet promise. She'd go. Not to prove something to the world, but to prove to Ethan that quiet strength ran in their blood. The day of the event was colder than expected, and as she stepped onto the competition grounds, Annie felt more ice than wind on her skin. The Copper Ridge Shooting Championship wasn't some small-town carnival event. It was nationally recognized, with TV crews, sponsors, and a crowd full of professionals who had military, law enforcement, or elite hunting backgrounds. Contestants strutted past with confidence, carrying modified rifles with scopes that probably cost more than Annie's pickup truck. A group of shooters nearby gave her a once-over and burst into laughter. "Hey lady, you lose your knitting club?" one of them said. Another added, "Hope there's a Category 4 best dressed for feeding chickens." Annie didn't flinch. She nodded politely, set down her old wooden case, and began assembling her father's vintage Remington rifle, a piece with no upgrades, no scope, no shine. Just wood, steel, and legacy. The competition was structured in 3 phases: precision, moving targets, and long-range accuracy. The first 2 rounds passed, and Annie kept her head low, making her shots with slow, quiet grace. While others boasted and analyzed their performance, Annie barely spoke. She let her bullets do the talking. By the time the final round came, the long-range challenge, Annie was still somehow in the top 10. That caught people's attention. The final challenge was a 1,000-yard shot at a steel plate no bigger than a dinner saucer. The wind had picked up, swirling unpredictably across the open field. One by one, contestants took their shots. Some missed entirely. Others hit the plate's edge. The leader, a snarky former Navy instructor named Brent Collins, hit near the center and stood with arms crossed, certain no one would beat him. Annie stepped up, rifle in hand. The crowd quieted. "Does she even have a scope?" someone whispered. "She's gonna miss by a mile," another snorted. She didn't respond. Annie adjusted her footing, took a deep breath, and closed one eye. She remembered the sound of Will's voice from years ago, "Don't just see the target. Feel it. Trust the wind. Trust yourself." She let the wind speak. Let the silence settle. Then squeezed the trigger. Crack. A second later, a tiny clang rang out. Dead center. The range fell silent. Brent's smug expression faltered. The judges conferred, stunned. Ethan, watching from the sidelines, jumped and screamed with joy. Then, the cheers. The crowd erupted. Even the snobby shooters had to clap. One woman approached Annie, stunned. That shot was impossible." Annie smiled, finally allowing herself a breath. "No, ma'am. Just not expected." When the awards were handed out, Annie took second place overall, not because of politics or favoritism, but because of pure skill. But the real prize was the stunned admiration in the eyes of those who had laughed, and the proud tears shining in her sons. That night, as the sun set over Copper Ridge, Ethan asked her, "Mom, how did you stay so calm when they were laughing at you?" She looked at him, thoughtful. "Because I wasn't there to impress them."